All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We're here today with Steve Toth. Steve is the creator of SEONotebook.com. It's a weekly SEO newsletter with 15,000 subscribers. He's also a consultant that likes to work with growth stage SaaS and e-com companies, and he's the founder of SEO IRL, Toronto's largest SEO-focused event series. And I think Steve kind of became a popular name from his work over at FreshBooks, which he later turned into a client. Over there, he ranked for a 300,000 search volume keyword, 5x their traffic, and I think got it to about 1.8 million, which is pretty insane. Did I miss anything there, Steve?
Yeah, 1.8 million per month.
Awesome.
That's a pretty big
Um,
one.
yeah, that's insane. Yeah, we'll get into it a little bit later, but just yeah, not something I've experienced with that caliber of a site. Um, Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about verticalized content clusters. We're going to be talking about some of your notes. We're going to be talking about some artificial intelligence if we have some time. But yeah, before we get into that, just a couple questions to kind of let our audience get to know you a little bit better, just in case they aren't already familiar. So yeah, what's your current day-to-day look like these days? Like, what do you spend most of your time doing?
I would say that most of it is actually spent research and development. I have a roster of clients that are all, fairly high-end clients. So I need to basically find out ways to prove value for those clients. So a lot of that, comes through automation, working with Python, various APIs, trying to scale my strategies across, a client base. So really coming up with ways to um, uh, take my strategies to the next level, by integrating various APIs, coming up with scripts that, check the search console data to just an example, one that would check search console data for missing keywords, low hanging fruit, and be able to scale that across an entire site. Basically, working on things like that.
So is so are you actually taking these people on as clients, or is it just all consulting?
Well, it's but basically a hybrid model of consulting and recurring client work. So we create content briefs as our main deliverable, something that's like steady month to month.
Mhm.
But then we also do a lot of improvisation and strategies.
Gotcha.
So they're expected to kind of take what you say and run with it then for the most part.
Yeah, I don't actually do the execution, but I consult and I tell them kind of what to do.
Perfect. Yeah, nice.
Gotcha. So what kind of team do you have behind you?
I've got a series of freelancers plus full time. So I would say the team is around like 5 to 7 people at any given time. Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. And yeah, how's it feel to have left the corporate life behind? How do you feel being on your own out in the wild? Do you ever miss working for a big company, or have you found the light?
I definitely like working for myself, I would say. I mean, FreshBooks was an amazing opportunity. But I basically tried to make the most of it while I was there. And I don't miss, having to deal with all the other things that come with working at a corporation. But luckily, when I was at FreshBooks, we were able to really focus on SEO and not have too many other distractions for the most part. But yeah, overall, I love working for myself and being a consultant.
Yeah. But yeah, that kind of leads to something I'm a little bit jealous of. I've never worked in-house at an agency somewhere. I've always just kind of done my own thing, I guess. So the type of experience that you would have over at FreshBooks versus my experience is just so drastically different. Down from like just the scale of the website. Like I think what FreshBooks is like DR85 is like 30K referring domains, like 6,000 index pages, something like that. And just on top of that, dealing with or just seeing how like the decision making works like within a big company and how they go about doing things. So do you think you would actually recommend, so even though you like working on your own better, would you recommend SEOs to get experience in-house, or do you think it doesn't really matter? You just kind of do something a little bit separate than that type of thing?
Yeah, I think in-house is a great experience because you get to focus on one website. And, when I was there, I was basically staring at the SERP for invoice templates every day. And, I could watch exactly how Google, changed that SERP from a day-to-day basis. I remember going up against a competitor once and they were ranking with 6 site links, large site links for number one for an unbranded term. And I
Hmm.
was like, how does that even happen? Right. But for a non-branded term, and just watching the image packs change, watching things like that, seeing how dynamic the SERP actually is. And I don't think you get that if you've got a portfolio of sites you're working on, and you're not just, you're basically committed to one site. So
Mm.
um, you know I feel like having that opportunity for anybody is really valuable, whether it's working at an in-house company or working on your own single website. But yeah, I would highly recommend being focused on one site for a while. I think you really learn a lot.
Yeah, it's something I've never really thought about it like that, but it's definitely yeah, just being so dialed in and so like obsessive about like just small details, because
Yeah,
it's really like your baby, right?
like it
Um,
becomes a mantra almost. It's interesting.
yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, like when I was doing it, right, I was very conscious of the fact that, like, other people had their eyes on FreshBooks because I was very public about my involvement with that. So it was actually quite nerve-wracking, like if anything went wrong with the site, or at one point the devs pushed an update that no index tapped the site, and like, your heart is dropping because you're sort of all in, right? So it
Hmm.
was yeah, it was really an intense experience at times. But overall, yeah, I would highly recommend being able to work in-house and work on one site.
Yeah, it's kind of like the build in public people on Twitter, except I feel like the stakes are a little bit higher in your situation because you're also like
Yeah.
dealing with someone else's rankings, it just feels a little more pressure, I guess, than if it was like your own project and just something you were starting and building it in public.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
How how
Go
hard
ahead.
was it for you to shift your focus from being, that dialed into one project to then kind of splitting off and being able to branch out into what you do now?
Well, I mean, when I was at FreshBooks, I was also side hustling for like the last like 9 or 10 months,
Okay.
pretty hard. So I got practice with that, fairly early on, like even before I broke out and started my own business. But I mean, I think, your key is really just like what I mentioned earlier, doing lots of R&D and trying to create strategies that you can scale across clients. You may not be watching the SERP every day obsessively like you would if you were working in-house at a company, but you can also, use tools to like rank trackers and whatnot to help keep a pulse on what clients are and how they're performing, what they're doing.
So were
Speaking,
you,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. So were you kind of working at FreshBooks and then maybe working on something in particular that gave you a kind of aha moment where you said, well, I could probably scale some of these ideas across other clientele?
Well, I was working at FreshBooks, and when we ranked number one for invoice template, that 300,000 search keyword, I posted on LinkedIn like that. We finally achieved this goal, and I was just thanking my team and thinking that this was pretty cool. The post went viral, and I got 2 clients out of it, and they were fairly large clients. And all of a sudden, I was doing like 10K a month, and I was like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, if I keep on doing this, how much more can I how many more clients can I sign up, and can I be like, super comfortable as a consultant? And I was lucky that I had the full-time job to sort of back me up, and that I could be really disciplined in terms of who I signed on as a client. And that allowed me to only take best fit clients. So I wasn't, working on 10 $1,000 a month clients. I was trying to work on one 10K client.
Sure.
Gotcha. Um, so speaking of R&D, do you do like all of your own R&D? Like, are you just off in your own like mad scientist world, just kind of like doing your own thing? Or are there other people that you also pay attention to heavily and draw inspiration from?
Yeah, I sometimes it's my clients that I draw inspiration from, to be honest. Like sometimes clients are very educated themselves. Like I would consider like quite a few of my clients on SEOs on the other end. So, one time we were talking about how we can snag the maximum amount of featured snippets. So we created a script that searched each featured snippet and searched each keyword and then recorded all the meta descriptions that were ranking, so we knew exactly which bit of text we wanted to we had to tweak to get the featured snippet. And then we also knew in terms of like a group of keywords that were all showing snippets, which sites had those which sites were earning those placements. So I created a script for that, and it would basically streamline our ability to adapt our content to rank for more snippets. So stuff like that pops up that we have requests from clients or whatever, and I go ahead and create something that that achieves that goal, right? So
Gotcha.
yeah, I'm inspired by a ton of different things. It just really depends on what I'm working on that day or that week.
Gotcha, gotcha. And do you have any of your own projects, like besides like SEO Notebook, like any websites that you're actually working on ranking and making money off of from like organic, an organic search presence, like an affiliate site or
Yeah,
something?
there's one content site that I operate. Yeah.
Cool. Care to tell us your niche?
No, I can't do that.
Hey, we tried.
Ooh,
Um,
juicy.
yeah, and last question, or second to last question before we dive into the other stuff. How exactly did you get your start into SEO? Like, because most of the time I hear you talk, the start kind of seems like FreshBooks, but what happened before FreshBooks?
Yeah, oh yeah, like it starts in 2010. I was working at a web development company as a copywriter, and we basically had a new blog. This was like when blogging was sort of taking off, like in the early 2010s, and I basically started the blog for that website.
Hmm.
Started messing around with ranking for keywords, basically like keyword 7% keyword density, and you were ranking. So it was really instant gratification, and it was cool to see what you could potentially do just with one page and ranking keywords. It's not like today where you have a topical authority and stuff like that you need to achieve. It was literally just like get 7% keyword density into one page and you'll start to rank.
The good old
um
days.
yeah, the good old days. And then I parlayed that into a job where I was working at an agency. I actually wasn't even hired as an SEO person. I was hired as a social media manager back in 2011, and
Hmm.
then sat beside the SEO folks there, and like just decided that this is definitely what I want to be doing versus social media management. It was just sort of like a foot in the door to the agency.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, this was like 2011 till around 2017 that I worked at that agency. Then I went and hopped to another agency for a little under a year. And then I went to FreshBooks.
Gotcha. And so, what made you get started, like in the whole chain of events? What made you get started doing content? It's kind of interesting because I think it was Matt Diggity was saying something like if he had to start over today, or what he would tell someone if they were just getting started in SEO is actually to start with content. Start with content, go work for a big company, a big website, and just see how they manage all their content, see how they manage their writers, things like that, and get started from there. So, what made you kind of get started on the content path in the first place?
Well, it goes back to high school when I dropped math, and I decided to write a letter to my parents explaining that I don't think the science and math track was going to be something that I wanted to do. So, it was this. I'm joking, but like I'm always been a writer. I really enjoy writing. That's part of what I think has made SEO Notebook successful, is that I've got a voice, and basically I write in a certain style, and I really enjoy it. So writing to me is just like a puzzle. It's a game to kind of get like the most succinct way to express yourself, and I just really enjoy it. So it was just something that came naturally.
Cool. Okay, so last intro question, and we'll go ahead and get into the meat of the conversation. But our friend Callan over at SEO Domains gave a talk at SEO Mastery Summit in Saigon recently, where he said there's basically three different SEO archetypes that people fall into. So I want you to listen to the following, and I think I know which one I would classify you as, but I want to see what you'd
Yeah,
classify
I took a
yourself
guess
as.
too.
So number one is mechanic, and I'll explain it more in a second, but number one, mechanic, number two, socializer, and number three, collector. So number one, mechanic. They're organized, A/B testers, tool lovers, on-page SEO god, need a reason for every SERP twinkle. So number two, the socializer. They're extroverts, givers, matchmakers, know who does what in the SEO world, connected, and have powerful win-win solutions. And then number three, the collector. They're stubborn, self-sufficient, quantity above quality, link sellers, and spammy niche gods. So which one would you classify yourself as?
I think it's safe to say that I'm not number three, but I think that I'm actually a mix of one and two, in that on page God, I mean God, whatever, but like somebody who's really good at on page, that's me. And then number two, the socializer aspect, definitely, like your network is your net worth, but
Hmm.
I'm not an extrovert. That's the only thing. So I'd say like a mix of one and two.
Gotcha. What are you, Nick? Or what do you think you are?
I told Callan I was a socializer in his post, which I
You're a
mean,
socializer
it's
and a
maybe a
collector.
collector. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got my start in domains, right? Hunting
Yeah,
domains and then
domains
working
and
on the spammy
PBN.
stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think I might be a little bit more like Steve, kind of mechanic, maybe a little
for
bit of all
sure.
three, mechanic, socializer, and collector. I don't know. Yeah, good to know. All right. So yeah, now that we've got the kind of intro stuff out of the way, we'll go ahead and get into the main event, which is verticalized content clusters. It looks like my camera stopped working for a second. Let's see if I can get it going. Nope. But anyway, so verticalized content clusters. Why don't you go ahead and give the viewers a little rundown on this? Because when you first said it, I didn't know what you were talking about. Of course, I know what content clusters are, topical clusters, but I'd never heard someone say verticalized content clusters. So, what exactly does that mean, and why are they important?
Yeah, sure. So vertical just means like, let's say a profession, or like a segment of a keyword that targets a certain group. So I guess the most popular one that I worked on was FreshBooks, where we had invoice template as the main keyword, but we also had pages for invoice template for graphic designers, for contractors, for freelance writers. We basically were able to take that keyword and span it across a bunch of different verticals. I've done the same thing with multiple projects beyond that, contract templates, indoor maps, stuff like that, and online education, which is my example there is slightly different, but basically taking a set of questions and applying those set of questions across a bunch of different verticals that the online education company targeted. So let's say they were teaching UX, they were teaching Python, they were teaching social media marketing. We would answer certain questions for each of those verticals, like how long does it take to learn Python, who hires Python developers, who what's a good cover letter for a Python developer, and then have like that question repeated across those different verticals.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. And so, yeah, I actually you gave me a couple sites to look at just to give me examples, and I went ahead and looked through them. And I think, if I'm remembering right, the one on FreshBooks was kind of the biggest one, or it just had a bunch more than like it wasn't just like templates. They had a bunch of other like links in that little sidebar where you could click. So it's actually pretty expansive. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah, it might be for invoice templates on FreshBooks. Yeah,
I believe that's it. Okay. Um,
might have
and
been Hub as well, because there's we did basically two large sections on FreshBooks: the Hub, the Resource Hub, and then also invoice templates.
so why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the process you go through for actually creating these? Like, I guess you can just start with maybe even just choosing what actual cluster to go after. I don't know. Like for example, FreshBooks, I don't know if they already had in mind that they wanted to do templates, or some of the other websites, maybe they already had something in mind that they wanted to do, or maybe they were even already doing it and you just kind of improved on it and scaled it. Or did you like, do you start with like ideation on some of these where you're actually saying, hey, this would be good for your industry, like these are good keywords or whatever, and I can scale it?
Yeah, well, in FreshBooks' case, they were bidding quite heavily on invoice templates, so it only made sense for us to go after that. Like they were bidding on paid search. But I think one of the ways that you can basically determine whether or not verticalization of keywords is a viable strategy for you is to basically put your keyword in the Google search bar and then put like for, like FOR.
Hmm.
So invoice template for, contract template for, or like, different types of things. And that will basically give you an indication as to whether or not those keywords are viable for you.
Hmm.
So that's one way to determine that. But when it comes to like choosing a keyword, if you're not bidding on it, you can say, for example, go into Ahrefs and check the paid search history on a keyword. And if you see that a website has been bidding on a keyword for a long time, it's probably a good indication that that keyword's profitable for them, and a good sort of signal that that would potentially be a good keyword for you as well. If you're still concerned about that and not sure, it doesn't hurt to run a paid search campaign and see how that converts before you go ahead and build like a 120-page cluster.
Gotcha. And so back to the kind of the beginning stages of building this cluster out, like I guess keyword research. I saw you say somewhere else that you really, I think it was as far as keyword research goes, you're not really a big fan of using tools, and that you like to use Google itself. And so for these big corporate clients, is that how you were doing the keyword research for all the clusters, just straight up in Google yourself, or how did that work?
Yeah, I like Google more than I do like tools per se, because tools, you tend to basically, I mean, I'm not saying tools like are no good for keyword research. They definitely have their place. But when you use tools, you're also using kind of like what the majority of people are targeting.
Hmm.
And you end up using like the same keywords, right? Whereas like I think if you mess around with Google enough, like wildcards and autocomplete and auto suggest, sorry, and things like related searches, or clicking a keyword and then clicking a result and then clicking the back button and see what other suggestions there are. There's just going to be a lot of opportunities there that most people aren't uncovering. So I
Hmm.
do like to use the Google search bar as much as possible. Yeah.
And so then from there, I guess you're just throwing everything in, I don't know, a tool like Keyword Cupid or something.
Yeah, to a degree, I will use Keyword Cupid. When we did FreshBooks, we didn't have any of those tools at our disposal, which is kind of interesting. Like we did a lot of things manually. We clustered our keywords with Excel. We didn't really have, this was back in like 2019, so there just weren't the tools that we have today.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I would use Keyword Cupid most likely today for that.
Gotcha. And kind of getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but you had mentioned basically you don't like using a lot of the tools because then you kind of have the same things that everyone else has. So are you not really a fan of tools like Surfer or like Pop or things like that?
No, I don't. I wouldn't say that I don't use on-page tools. I think Surfer is great, but it just, when it comes to the keyword research part and deciding what to write about, um, uh, that's where I want to use different keyword research tools, not per se like on-page tools.
Gotcha. And so, all right, so you've got your
But
keyword.
but I will say one thing as well, that even this morning, one of my notes that went out was a note about information gain and you know, creating content that's new to the SERPs, and being able to basically you know, teach Google something new. I do believe that with on-page tools, as good as they are, you need to be offering some unique value in your posts, basically to help them rank.
Could
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
sorry, could you tell us a little bit about how you go about conceptualizing you know, going after a SERP like that doesn't exist quite yet?
What do you mean that doesn't exist?
While you're saying you're going after targets that, you know, haven't been discussed before, there's not a lot of data on, right? Or am I
Well, I
wrong
mean,
about that?
when it comes to like searching, researching stuff with Google, and then you know, going after those keywords, I mean, it's still fair to say that there's going to be people doing the same thing. But what I was kind of mentioning was that when creating a piece of content, you don't want to just have all the same information as what the top 10 results have,
Oh,
because
sure.
that's going to be a poor user experience if Google was to rank, you know, 10 basically identical articles, right? So you want to basically be able to differentiate yourself in that.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I feel like that would probably be something, you know, a good form of future proofing as well with, you know, AI. Looks like it's here to stay. You know, all the articles are going to be exactly the same here pretty soon, if they're not already. I mean, people are pretty much using writers that are doing exactly what the AI is doing, just kind of throwing it all together and rephrasing it. So yeah, probably a good idea to start adding something new to the conversation. Um, yeah, so you know, you get your keyword data, a lot of it from Google using like the autocomplete, things like that. You get all your keyword clusters, and okay, so now you're at the stage where you want to actually do the content. What does your content process look like? You know, what kind of team were you using, and what was your role in the whole content creation process?
Yeah, so with respect to content creation, they all start with a brief. You know, I basically want to outline like a skeleton in terms of what we're writing about. And then more recently, I am using ChatGPT to just help give the writers like some direction on what to include in each subsequent paragraph underneath the heading. So if the heading is like, you know, what is or like how to create an SEO proposal or something like that, the bullet points will be like, you know, list your team, or talk about what tools you use, or you know, explain the strategy, show some case studies, like little bullet points like that underneath each heading. So I find ChatGPT to be pretty useful in that regard. And
Hmm.
then you know, basically I just use a tool like Surfer to make sure that we have like all the correct entities in it. And you know, once that goes off to the writer, basically just want to arm that writer with as much you know, information as possible. Give them source material, give them you know, unique information to add to each post. Basically ensure that they have everything that they need to write, you know, from like a, if maybe not subject matter expert, but like some, you know, give them basically like the necessary background that they're going to need to execute on a brief.
Gotcha. So as far as the writers were concerned, it sounds like you had a pretty well structured kind of um, format that they're going to be following, and this is the information you're including. It seems very strict. So I'm guessing they didn't have too much leeway with what they're adding, or did they have a bit of control there as well?
Well, I always encourage the writers to be creative, you know, to think of stuff that they might not, that might not be in the brief. But generally, the writers, when they set out to, you know, create the content, I'm arming them with my notes that are relevant, explaining how I want my internal linking done, how featured snippets should be phrased, stuff like that.
Gotcha. And how many writers do you usually work with? Like, let's just say, for example, the FreshBooks one. Believe there were 20. It wasn't just 20 pages because then each little cluster had like its own different pages as well. But how many writers, for example, did the FreshBooks project take?
Yeah, we had 5 writers come into the building for 3 months and just crank out something like two and a half articles a day, pretty much.
Wow, so you had local writers. How'd you find them?
They were just through the network of one of the content people there. I don't remember exactly where she found them, but yeah, we hired 5 local writers to do all that stuff, and we invited them into the office for 3 months, and that's what they did.
Gotcha. And during this time, did you act as like the editor? Like, were you the one overseeing the work and checking it and saying like, this is good, this is bad, whatever?
We had a team, so I was very involved in the early stages in training those writers for a couple weeks, and then when the work came back, we would give feedback on everything, refine processes with certain writers. Some were stronger than others, some required more coaching, but yeah, that's basically what we did in those early stages. And then we had a team of people who also QA'd. We were talking about 650 articles, so it would be
Yeah.
hard for one person to do all that.
And how many people did you have doing like the on-page optimizations after the articles were all finished, all the interlinking, all that stuff?
Um, yeah, I need to think back because this was like 4 years ago.
Yeah, sorry.
Um, uh, I believe we launched the 650 with some internal linking that was done by the uploader.
Hmm.
But then I think we went back and created more in subsequent months.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, yeah, and I guess then we can go talk about link building a little bit. Um, so like FreshBooks, for example, it's like DR85 or whatever. It's a super authority site. Um, were you actually building links to these things? And if you were, like where were you building the links to? Like for example, were you building it to like the super like parent page, like this is all of our templates, or to each individual template page, or how did that work?
Yeah, we were building links, and I would say that probably 80% of the links went to the main invoice template page, and then 20% went to like the secondary and tertiary pages. But yeah, it was probably about 80/20, with most of them going to that money page.
Gotcha, kind of a top down, trickle down kind of style. And you said you
Any
did.
oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Any homepage building while you were doing that, or predominantly focused on those inner pages, hub pages?
It can get pretty challenging, like doing like Haro and other like homepage link building techniques with a site that large.
Right.
So I don't think that we did much homepage link building, but we also got a ton of just natural homepage links, so it wasn't really that much of a
Right.
we weren't missing out on too much.
Yeah, I'm assuming they just get links coming in all the time, company in that size. And as far as like anchor text, so you're setting guest posts and niche edits, and how aggressive were you with the anchor text?
We were pretty conservative in terms of like not having too many exact match, but we would, add words to each side of the keyword to kind of make them nice and varied.
Gotcha.
I also have a spreadsheet that checks up against the anchor text that you already have based on an Ahrefs export, and basically enables you to not repeat the same anchor text if possible. So we did our best for that, but obviously we had some exact match.
Do you ever play around with like splitting anchors up? So, for example, if the exact match was like template for plumbers, you could do, and you didn't want to do exact match, you could do like one anchor text that's template, and then you could do another link, and the anchor text would be like for plumbers. And I think there was something in the Yandex leak where it was saying that they look at anchors as like the overall pool of anchors. So if you split anchors up like that, it kind of pieces it together and kind of works in a very similar way. Like they don't need the anchors to be right. They don't need like the exact match or whatever.
So you mean like on separate pages, like have plumbers on linked on one page and then template linked on the other page?
Yeah, like so they basically just split the exact match up from on two different backlinks. So like template and then
Yeah.
like four plumbers.
Well, I mean, I don't think in those terms too much, and but what I do try and think about is how do I get this link clicked in an ideal world?
Hmm.
Obviously, like if you're on some guest post, a lot of those guest posts may not get like a ton of traffic, but basically, I want to be able to give the user an indication of what lies on the other half, what lies beyond that link, and just basically trying to maximize the amount of referral traffic I get from a link. That's kind of how I think about it.
Referral traffic, interesting.
That's
Okay.
that's really interesting, right? Like I feel it's very different than anything we've heard in recent times where you're actually considering the what the user might get out of the anchor versus manipulating the
What
algorithm,
an
which
SEO. What an SEO
Well,
you
refreshing.
you
are.
Yeah,
well, you
yeah.
can have both, so there's no reason you
Sure.
can't have both, right? So that's
No,
kind
I
of how I.
like that. Yeah.
And so as far as building links goes, to like for a big company like that, did you have like a different set of standards for that type of site versus if you're your own content site?
Yeah, like we had a very nice budget to play with, that's for sure. So that basically meant that we were, building links on what, you would call like a credible site, right? Some site that's not like traffic manipulated, that, is a
Hmm.
real blog. And because we were, a legit company, we had more opportunities to be linked on, various pages and whatnot, various like authority sites and whatnot. They didn't really have a problem with linking to FreshBooks versus if it's like some guy's fishing blog or something like that, like they're not going to link to it, right?
Gotcha.
So we were lucky enough to be in that position, and the standards that we went after. I don't want to like say it was more about page relevance and domain relevance that more than anything.
Hmm.
But if I were to say, like, we probably weren't getting links on like DR20 websites for FreshBooks.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're a big relevance guy, and you were saying like domain level relevance.
Ideally, yeah.
Gotcha. And do you have any recollection? I mean, of course, it's not going to be perfect, but if you had to guess, just an average like DR range, an average like price you were paying for these links?
Um, DR range probably in the higher end. I would say at least like DR 60 plus,
Hmm.
and then you know, as low as like 200 maybe. With like a high quality guest post like written for that, and this was even before the times of AI writers and whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, and then in terms of like budget per link, it could also go extremely high, like into like the near into the 1,000 range if it was something we thought was worth it.
Gotcha, gotcha. And did the company have any kind of issues with you building links for it?
Yeah, we definitely got into some hot water once where we reached out to somebody's blog, and the guy knew our CEO, and then he's like, so and so reached out to me and wanted a link, and then he's like, well, that person doesn't even work here, I don't know who that person is. So we had to explain that, and like luckily we were doing like quite well, but we had to basically stop that link building campaign.
Gotcha. Got in a little trouble. Interesting. Um, and I guess last question, unless Nick's got any about the content clusters. What are some of the biggest challenges or like bottlenecks, I guess, that you faced while creating these clusters across these different websites?
Um, I guess like, like some have been extremely smooth. Like when I worked on BrainStation, that was a company that, really dedicated the resources to be able to execute on that campaign. And, we executed it fairly well. I think right now we're sitting at like a $500,000 traffic value for the pages that we created. So when you have client buy-in and the client staffs the project accordingly, there's really like, it's pretty smooth sailing, but that's not going to be the case all the time, right? Some clients, have writers that are slower and maybe not as good, or I try my best to recommend writers to them, but like, sometimes you don't always have the follow through on the client's end that you wish you had.
Mhm.
So just that would be probably the main bottleneck for that.
Gotcha. And one last thing, I guess. So, most of our viewers, I think a lot of our viewers are mainly like in an affiliate and stuff like that, probably not doing as much like client work, even though I know we do have some client people, or maybe some people that want to get into client work eventually. Um, but normally when we talk about content clusters, we're not talking about these like hyper verticalized kind of clusters that you're talking about. Do you just do like regular content clusters? And if so, like how does your approach change for as far as planning them out?
Yeah, so actually you can kind of use like ChatGPT to don't just ask it to create content clusters, but like let's say like, give me a walkthrough from like A to Z on, this topic, and then or like, detail provide like a high level overview about X topic, and then kind of see what, different topics it mentions that could warrant their own pages.
Mhm.
This is like a way to kind of build a topical map. So I like doing that. For example, obviously going through your competition and seeing what they're talking about, what's performing well for them, is another way that you can build out a non-verticalized cluster.
Gotcha. And I guess one more thing about the clusters before we move on. I've said that a couple times now, but have you ever thought about or have you ever tried applying a programmatic SEO approach to these hyper verticalized clusters? It's not something I really have experience with, but it seems like these highly repeatable clusters that you're talking about would be an amazing uh, uh, way to use programmatic SEO. Maybe not on a client site, but maybe you could even do it on like a personal project or something.
Yeah, no, I have done it on client side as well. There's a tool called PageFactory.app, I think,
Hmm.
that we've used to basically, yeah, replicate one article and then kind of swap out various parts of that. There's a really cool case study by the site Niche Twins, or
Hmm.
Niche Twins, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
And they have an article called Brand Swapping. If you want to Google that, like, it's a really cool case study on programmatic
I
SEO.
think I saw
And
that actually. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's really awesome. Like they basically took like the topic of dirt bikes and wrote articles like why dirt bike doesn't start, and then it was like
Hmm.
why Suzuki, why Husqvarna, why all these different dirt bike brands don't start,
Hmm.
and basically do that. So I have done that with a couple of clients, and I think it's just comes down to, how much else you're doing, and do you have, if you have or don't have the time to invest in like actually writing unique content for that, then it's an option to do this like brand swapping / programmatic approach. But it really only boils down to like how much you're trying to chew off at a given time.
Gotcha. All right, so yeah, moving on to your newsletter, SEO Notebook, 15K subscribers, probably more than that by now. But yeah, what do you think is your most underappreciated note of the past year or so?
Uh, that's a tough question. I actually just released a note on information gain that I reissued. Like I added a technique to that and then reissued that.
Hmm.
I have seen a couple people share it on LinkedIn and other channels, but That one I would say is pretty good. Like there's basically a strategy whereby to add unique information to a site, you want to Google your keyword and then something like file type PowerPoint, file type PDF, doc, etc., and then find unique information that's only contained within those kind of files versus like um, other information on web pages that everybody else is researching. So I would say that one is a pretty popular note. The bit that I added to it was actually a tip by a guy named Eric Lancheris in his group My Traffic Research, whereby he mentioned that some public knowledge might be something like it takes 2 hours and 18 minutes to charge an iPhone 14 from 0 to 100%, right? But like maybe the information gain that you add to that is like it takes 1 hour to charge an iPhone 14 to 50%, right? So it's like how can you kind of like splice and dice data and create something new, right? So I said the same thing as like units of measure, right? Like let's say it's like Steve's golf R goes 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. And maybe it's like Steve's golf R goes 0 to 100 kilometers in 4.5 seconds, right?
That's a
So it's
pretty
just like,
awesome golf cart.
yeah, well, it's my Golf R. It's like a
Golf R,
Volkswagen.
yeah, the
Oh.
Volkswagen
Yeah,
cool car.
golf cart.
I was
Yeah,
like,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah, it's a
yeah,
fast golf cart.
yeah. It is. Well, it's like that's my car. I love it. It's like a
Awesome.
sporty little hatchback. It doesn't look
Yeah,
like it's fast, but it is fast.
We actually had a friend
very,
in
yeah,
high
that's
school
awesome.
who had a golf,
Roman.
and yeah, he had nitrous hooked up into it and stuff, and he took
Hmm.
me for a ride in it one time and scared the hell out of me. But it's a cool little car. I always really liked it. Um, I used to actually want a Volkswagen. When I was younger, my dad wouldn't let me get one because he didn't like European cars.
Yeah, well,
I,
that's for me. Like, that's just like I like the low profile aspect of it. Plus, like, I can fit a car seat back there and whatnot. But
yeah,
yeah, it's got 300 horsepower, like stock, and then
Yeah,
eventually, once my insurance or once my warranty runs out, I'll probably tune it a little bit to make it even
nice.
faster.
Yeah,
awesome.
I
Yeah.
love cartooning as well. Chris makes fun of me for it here and there. I'm a big Euro car guy as
You should
well.
have seen he had an Infinity. He was riding around it, and it was
Oh
so
well,
embarrassing.
that thing though was a race car. I mean, it was pretty
Oh
nasty.
my God, it was so
Um,
loud. Fun stuff though.
For viewers that don't know yet, you've heard us talk about SEO Notebook quite a bit. When we're done with this interview, make sure you get over to SEOnotebook.com and sign up for that newsletter. It's incredibly valuable and absolutely free. So yeah, definitely get on
Yeah,
there.
and when you sign up, you'll get access to a bunch of cool spreadsheets that I created. One of the most recent ones that I added to that was a spreadsheet that basically uses this add-on to Sheets add-on to basically get like the last modification date for the URLs in your competitors' sitemaps, and then it marries that information about last modification date with Ahrefs data. So you can basically like spy in and see, what pages your competition is releasing and how those pages are doing, what they're actively doing content refreshes with, and how that is basically performing, and basically kind of see like what your competitor is publishing on weekly or monthly basis. So all those assets are free, and when you sign up to SEO Notebook, you'll get access to, I believe it's like 5 spreadsheets right now.
Good
Awesome.
stuff. Good stuff. So leaving off the newsletter, one last thing about the newsletter. I've seen on Twitter that Twitter went crazy about newsletters over the past like year or two, and I think it's kind of reached peak saturation over there as far as the newsletter game goes. So I just wanted to know, like, what are your ideas on newsletters as business models? Is it something you would still recommend now? I guess it's probably maybe more saturated now in the SEO sphere, but what about for people not doing SEO? Could you recommend doing the newsletter as a business model?
Yeah. So when I got in, it was nobody doing newsletters. Like it was pretty much like a blue ocean. But what I would say now is like, let's say, for example, AI, right? AI is a great time to release a newsletter on AI. I know that a
True.
couple of people have already done it. So I love it as a marketing strategy. Basically, like the one thing you just have to know is that you've got to be um, uh, religious about your posting, right? Like you have to post at least once a week, or else people are going to totally forget who you are, right? So now me, like within like almost 4 years of doing SEO Notebook, it'll be coming up in like June, I think. I haven't missed a week, right?
Hmm.
And
It's
like
amazing.
lots of life happens, like in 4 years, but it's just one thing that I dedicated myself to, is publishing a new piece of content every week for almost 4 years now.
It's another treadmill, kind of like a Facebook group or a YouTube channel. It's a treadmill that once you start, you got to keep running on it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
but it's a channel that's well worth doing that because you own that list, right?
for sure, for
Right.
sure. Yeah, a little bit different. You're not really tied into a platform as much as you are with some of these other things. Um, So you spoke about AI a little bit. We only got like 6 minutes left or so. I'm just going to machine gun some AI questions at you because you can't really talk about SEO without talking about AI these days. I think our viewers would be angry if we didn't talk to you about AI more, even though you've kind of thrown in some cool AI stuff already.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, so yeah, what are your general thoughts on AI? Blessing or a curse? Just yeah, general thoughts.
Well, we don't know yet how it's going to affect, uh, search behavior. There's a lot of people who won't change their search behavior until everybody has changed their search behavior. There's a lot of people like us that are on the cutting edge and kind of realize, hey, like now if I want to pack my bags and go to Austin, which I am doing next week just for a trip, maybe I ask ChatGPT and what to do in Austin versus trying to get an article on the top 10 things to do in
Hmm.
Austin. So, we know that exists, but I don't know if the general public knows that. And also, like, I don't think that, I think Google, especially Google, is going to be careful about sending people to Bard, in a very obvious way, and taking away the clicks that they could potentially get from ads, right? So Google has a vested interest in kind of like trying to keep up with Bing, but not do it so much that they're going to cannibalize their own search traffic.
Hmm.
So I do believe that a lot of that stuff is TBD,
Hmm.
and we don't know how long it's going to take to be adopted by the average person, right? Like the average person probably doesn't even know that they're clicking on ads, let alone that they can search something besides Google to get their answer.
For sure. And yeah, speaking of Austin, that's where we're based out of. I'm actually in Malaysia right now, but Nick's is still back in Austin, and I'm hoping, and I think Nick's gonna
Yeah,
end up
I'll
going to the
probably
social. Yeah.
yeah, I'll see you on Sunday, I'm guessing, if you're at the Mastermind
Oh,
Social.
oh, nice! I didn't know that you were going to be there. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Right on.
So, do you use any other AI tools besides ChatGPT and Playground?
Just OpenAI Playground and ChatGPT. I haven't gotten into the visual stuff with like Midjourney and whatnot, but it's
Hmm.
just a time thing for me right now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just like ChatGPT, I would say is my main go-to right now. Obviously, I have the paid version and messing around with ChatGPT 4. But beyond that, I haven't really, like, I'm not a big Jarvis guy and stuff like that. No.
Gotcha. Yeah, the images are something that every time I play around with it, the images I make are horrible, like beyond horrible. But when maybe it gets better, or maybe I just get better at prompting it, that's actually something I'm really pretty excited about too. So, what are some of like the biggest things in your process that you're currently using AI for?
I like schema. Like, I think it's like just a great tool for coming up with schema.
Oh my God, we
Um,
should do that. We hate schema,
Right.
so we should
Yeah.
just get
right.
Yeah, I just
ChatGPT.
got hit by a lightning bolt.
One tip I can give you that a friend of mine named Mike Friedman, who also has a newsletter called the SEO Pub, that he gave me was like, let's say it takes, let's say it takes you like 4 prompts to finally get like what you want. You can also ask ChatGPT at the end of that, give me one prompt that would have, solved this. That would give me one prompt that would have achieved the above. So you can actually take your trial and error of all those
Wow.
prompts and just ask it at the end to give you one prompt so that the next time you use it, you can just use the one.
God,
Cool.
it's like Inception with prompts.
Right.
Um, so this might be our last AI question. Depends how fast your answer is. But what are your thoughts on AI content? Do you use AI content? If you do use it, what are you doing before you put it on your website? Just thoughts about Google potentially cracking down on it in the future, even though they kind of say it's okay now. Just what are your thoughts on the content itself?
Yeah, when it comes to client work, we're pretty conservative about using straight AI content. If we do, we're definitely using a writer to basically, add facts, add quotes, clean up, certain, uh, just clean up the sentences, make things more compact, sound less like AI. But I'm not using it actively for clients, like in terms of like large scale content production.
Hmm.
If there's stuff like, content briefs, and creating background for a client, I think that's all good. But yeah, being conservative with the amount of like large scale content production that we do with it, in order to future proof that and just play it a bit safe. Since I'm working on legit company websites that have a long term goal in mind, and
Gotcha.
plus the clients also have the budget for it, so it's not
True.
like
Right.
I need to do it.
All right, final question. Any thoughts on the most recent core update, March 2023, as well as I guess you could talk about the two spam updates in December, but mainly the recent March one, even though it hasn't really been that much. And actually, there's more activity today on US mobile specifically. But yeah, any thoughts on that so far?
I haven't been affected by it, to be honest. So I basically look, like we all do when we have updates in Search Console. So I haven't seen really any large positive or negative movement on this one in particular. So
Hmm.
I think we have to wait and see, what the conclusions are out of that. Really, no comment, to be honest, right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's kind of my answer as well. Um, Actually seeing some kind of reversals on some sites from the past like December updates, but there's just so
Yeah.
many updates happening. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on these days. All right. Yeah, Steve, it's been great talking to you. Yeah, some lots of good info here. I guess before we go, is there anything you want to plug one more time? Where can people find you? I know we already plugged SEO Notebook, but yeah, you can go ahead and tell people one more time.
Yeah, probably the best place to follow me is on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not super active there. So LinkedIn and even Facebook, you could follow me. And then the best thing to do is just sign up to SEO Notebook. It's where I put all my best stuff. I don't hold anything back there. So, just that's pretty much, like, if anybody asks me, hey, can I learn SEO from you? I'm like, just subscribe there, because like,
Mhm.
I'm giving away one to many, and I'm giving away my best stuff there. And then beyond that, I don't know like how many users or how many people will be able to watch this before, but on May 5th, in Toronto, we're hosting SEO IRL. We're targeting 100 people to come out for that event. It's going to be in downtown Toronto, Canada. Anyone's welcome to join. You just got to buy a ticket. And yeah, really happy to sort of be able to bring that sort of a social event to the really awesome community that we have here, quite frankly.
Awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We'll probably plan on releasing the podcast early next week, and we'll blast it out to our email list and our group and all that good stuff. So hopefully we'll sell you at least one ticket for SEO IRL in Toronto on May 5th, you said?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Awesome.
Steve, what about are you still working on that WordPress plugin?
So with the WordPress plugin, what I've done is basically had the functionality replicated inside a Python script. So like, for example, like I won't mention the name, but there's a site in the, let's say, computer space, that has like $3.2 million traffic value.
Mhm.
Like I just sold them a report, right, like for their website. So what I realized is that versus uh, software development versus working with a script, you can do so much more with a script without incurring large development costs. So what I've basically done is kept that exact process, but in a script form, and just selling it privately to large companies like that. Like I think those guys, when I was looking, they did $3.2 million traffic value in Ahrefs.
Wow.
Woo.
Nice.
All right, Steve,
Yeah.
good stuff. We know you got to run, so we won't keep you any longer. Thanks a ton for coming out and talking to us. And yeah, maybe we'll have you on in another year or so and just check in and see how things are going.
Sure, sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, cheers.
See you next week.
Yeah, take care, Nick. Good to meet you, and good to meet
Likewise.
you, Chris, as well.
Yes, sir. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Be sure to check the links below for more info on this topic, as well as other cool stuff like SEO case studies, our Facebook community, and our link building services. And like always, please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks, and happy ranking.